The moment Jake Mitchell carried his unconscious boss through her front door, he knew his life was about to change forever. What he couldn't have predicted was how one act of kindness would unravel years of misunderstandings and create a second chance neither of them thought possible. If you've ever believed that some mistakes can't be fixed or that some people are beyond redemption, this story might just change your mind. Like, subscribe, and join me on this emotional journey that proves sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities lead to our most profound connections. Jake stared at his phone, the screen illuminating his tired face in the darkness of his small apartment. It was nearly midnight, and his 5-year-old daughter Lily was finally asleep after a particularly difficult bedtime routine. The text message glowed accusingly, "Mitchell. Need your help. The copper lantern. Now." It was from Victoria Reynolds, his boss of 3 years and the most intimidating woman he'd ever met. Victoria ran Pinnacle Marketing with ruthless efficiency, and in the office, they called her the Ice Queen behind her back. Jake had never seen her smile, let alone ask for help. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Since losing his wife to cancer 2 years ago, Jake had been barely keeping it together. His neighbor Mrs. Patel had already watched Lily twice this week while he worked late. Asking again felt impossible, but ignoring his boss seemed equally unthinkable. "Mrs. Patel," he whispered into the phone minutes later. "I'm so sorry to call this late." 30 minutes later, Jake pushed through the door of the Copper Lantern, a high-end bar downtown that he'd never set foot in before. The place reeked of expensive perfume and privilege. He spotted Victoria immediately, slumped at the bar, her usually perfect chignon coming undone, her blazer discarded on the stool beside her. "Ms. Reynolds," he approached cautiously. She turned, her eyes unfocused. "Mitchell. You came." Her words slurred together, and Jake realized with shock that Victoria Reynolds, the woman who terrified the entire office, was completely drunk. "Let's get you home," he said gently, noticing the hostile stares from men at the bar who'd clearly been circling. "Don't need your help," she muttered, but when she tried to stand, she stumbled against him. Jake caught her, feeling the weight of her against his chest. For a moment, something shifted in the air between them. Victoria looked up at him, vulnerability replacing her usual steel. "Everyone leaves," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "Not tonight," Jake replied, helping her toward the door. Getting Victoria home proved challenging. She alternated between belligerent independence and moments of startling honesty. "You're the only one who doesn't look at me like I'm a monster," she said as he helped her into his car. "You're not a monster," Jake replied, buckling her seatbelt. "You're just good at your job." She laughed bitterly. "Good at my job. Terrible at everything else." At her luxury apartment building, Jake had to practically carry her to the elevator. The doorman gave him a suspicious look until Victoria mumbled, "He's fine, George. He's the good one." Inside her apartment, Jake was struck by how impersonal it felt, beautiful but sterile, like a hotel suite rather than a home. No photos, no mementos. Nothing like his own cluttered apartment filled with Lily's drawings and remnants of the life he'd shared with his wife. Victoria stumbled toward the couch, collapsing in an ungraceful heap. Jake found a blanket and covered her, then filled a glass with water and placed it on the coffee table beside her. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked, her voice small. "I've been horrible to you." Jake shrugged. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're struggling. Even after I denied your request for flexible hours last month." Jake stiffened. That had been a difficult blow. As a single dad, he'd needed those hours to be there for Lily's kindergarten pickup. "Even then," he said finally. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't understand. I thought you were just another employee trying to take advantage." She reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My father died today. Heart attack. We hadn't spoken in 5 years." Jake sat beside her, the revelation hitting him hard. "I'm sorry." Don't be. He was cruel. But now. She trailed off, her eyes closing. Now I'll never get to tell him he was wrong about me. Jake stayed until she fell asleep, arranging a pillow beneath her head and making sure she was positioned safely on her side. Before leaving, he wrote a note with his phone number and left it beside the water glass. Call if you need anything. Jake. The next morning, Jake rushed to get Lily ready for school, his mind still on Victoria. He'd never seen that side of her, vulnerable, human. It made him question everything he thought he knew about his intimidating boss. Daddy, you're putting my shoes on the wrong feet, Lily giggled, pulling him back to reality. Sorry, pumpkin, he smiled, fixing her shoes. Daddy's a little distracted today. Is it because of the sad lady? Lily asked innocently. Jake froze. What sad lady? The one you helped last night. Mrs. Patel told me you had to go help a sad lady. Jake made a mental note to be more careful about what he said around Mrs. Patel. Yes, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups get sad too. After dropping Lily at school, Jake headed to the office with a sense of dread. Would Victoria remember what happened? Would she be embarrassed? Angry? He prepared himself for the worst. The office was buzzing with unusual energy when he arrived. His colleague Tara immediately pulled him aside. Victoria's not here, she whispered. Her assistant said she called in sick. Victoria Reynolds has never taken a sick day in 3 years. Jake nodded, relieved for the reprieve but also strangely concerned. He settled at his desk, trying to focus on work, when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My office. 5 p.m. today. V. Jake's stomach dropped. So much for the reprieve. The day crawled by. By 4:55, Jake was a bundle of nerves as he rode the elevator to the executive floor. Victoria's assistant wasn't at her desk, and the door to Victoria's office was closed. He knocked tentatively. Come in, Mitchell. Victoria sat behind her immaculate desk, looking as polished and intimidating as ever. If not for the slight shadows under her eyes, expertly concealed with makeup, no one would guess she'd been falling down drunk just hours earlier. Close the door, she said, her voice cool and professional. Jake obeyed, preparing himself for termination. Helping your boss when they're vulnerable was probably crossing some corporate line. I remember everything, Victoria said without preamble. Jake swallowed hard. Ms. Reynolds, Victoria, she corrected him. After last night, I think you've earned the right to use my first name. Jake nodded, surprised. Victoria, I just wanted to help. And you did. She stood, walking around her desk to face him directly. You showed me kindness when you had every reason not to. You saw me at my absolute worst, and you treated me with dignity. Anyone would have done the same, Jake said uncomfortably. No, Victoria shook her head firmly. They wouldn't have. Most people in this office would have either left me there or used it as leverage. You're different, Jake. It was the first time she'd ever used his first name, and the sound of it in her voice did something strange to his chest. I've been unfair to you, she continued. Particularly about your request for flexible hours. I didn't understand the challenges you face as a single parent. Jake stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. I'd like to rectify that, Victoria said, handing him a folder. This is a new schedule I've drafted for you. Core hours from 9 to 3, with the rest of your work to be completed remotely. It should allow you to pick up your daughter from school. Jake opened the folder with shaking hands. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept my apology, Victoria replied, a hint of vulnerability returning to her eyes. And perhaps, have dinner with me this weekend? To properly thank you. Jake looked up, startled. Dinner? Yes, Victoria said, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. Unless that would be inappropriate? Jake thought about Lily, about his responsibilities, about the complicated nature of workplace relationships. But he also thought about the woman he'd glimpsed last night, the real Victoria beneath the corporate armor. "I'd like that," he said finally. "But I should warn you, I come as a package deal these days." "My daughter." "Lily," Victoria supplied, surprising him. "You mentioned her name last night. Perhaps we could do something child-friendly? I hear the botanical gardens have a butterfly exhibit this weekend." The suggestion was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that Jake felt something shift inside him, a door opening that had been closed since his wife died. "She would love that," he said softly. Victoria smiled then, a real smile that transformed her face and made Jake realize she wasn't just beautiful in the conventional sense, she was radiant when she allowed herself to be genuine. "Then it's a date," she said, extending her hand. Jake took it, feeling the warmth of her palm against his. "It's a date." As he left her office, Jake felt lighter than he had in years. One act of kindness had created a ripple effect, changing both their trajectories in ways neither could have anticipated. Sometimes, he realized, the most important connections begin in our most vulnerable moments. The butterfly exhibit was crowded that Saturday, but Lily didn't seem to mind. She darted from display to display, her face alight with wonder as colorful wings fluttered around her. "Daddy, look," she squealed as a blue morpho butterfly landed on her outstretched finger. Jake smiled, but his eyes weren't on his daughter. They were on Victoria, who stood beside Lily with an expression of genuine delight. Gone was the severe business attire, replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and without her usual armor of makeup and power suits, she looked younger, softer. "It likes you," Victoria told Lily, kneeling down to the child's level. "Butterflies can sense kind hearts." Lily beamed at her. "Do they like you too?" As if in answer, a delicate yellow butterfly landed on Victoria's shoulder. Lily giggled in delight, and Victoria's laughter joined hers, a sound Jake realized he'd never heard before. "I think that's a yes," Jake said, capturing the moment with his phone camera. Victoria looked up at him, her eyes bright with something that looked suspiciously like happiness. "Thank you for this," she said quietly while Lily was distracted by a new butterfly. "I can't remember the last time I did something just for joy." "Everyone deserves joy," Jake replied, echoing his words from that night. "Even intimidating marketing executives." Victoria smiled, a hint of her old confidence returning. "I'm not intimidating today." "No," Jake agreed, holding her gaze. "Today you're just Victoria." After the butterfly exhibit, they had lunch at a child-friendly cafe where Lily charmed Victoria with stories about kindergarten and her collection of stuffed unicorns. To Jake's amazement, Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's 5-year-old logic. "You're good with her," Jake commented as they watched Lily play on the cafe's small playground. Victoria's expression turned wistful. "Children are honest. They haven't learned to play the games adults play." She hesitated, then added, "I always wanted children, but my career came first. Then suddenly I was 40 with a corner office and no one to share it with." "It's never too late," Jake said gently. Victoria met his eyes. "Isn't it?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities neither was ready to name. The weeks that followed brought changes to both their lives. At work, Victoria remained professional but with a new approachability that transformed the office atmosphere. Employees who had once feared her began to respect her instead. For Jake, the flexible schedule meant he could be there for Lily's school events and still excel at his job. But the biggest change was the growing presence of Victoria in their lives. Weekend outings became a regular occurrence, the zoo, museums, parks. Lily began to ask for Ms. Victoria with increasing frequency. "She's not like Mommy," Lily told Jake one night as he tucked her in. "But I like her. She makes you smile again." Jake kissed his daughter's forehead, amazed at her perceptiveness. She makes me smile too, pumpkin. 1 month after the night at the Copper Lantern, Victoria invited Jake to dinner, just the two of them. Mrs. Patel agreed to watch Lily, winking knowingly at Jake as he left dressed in his best shirt. Victoria had chosen a small, intimate restaurant away from the business district where they wouldn't run into colleagues. When Jake arrived, she was already seated, looking nervous in a way he'd never seen before. "You look beautiful," he said, taking the seat across from her. She did, in a simple black dress with her hair down and minimal jewelry. But it was more than her appearance, there was a softness to her now, a humanity that had been missing before. "I have something to tell you," Victoria said after they'd ordered. "I've been offered a position as CEO of a company in Chicago." Jake felt his heart sink. Congratulations. When do you leave?" "I haven't accepted yet," Victoria replied, watching his reaction carefully. "It's an incredible opportunity, but for the first time in my life, my career isn't the only thing that matters to me." She reached across the table, taking his hand. "Jake, meeting you, really meeting you, not just as my employee but as the kind, strong man you are, has changed me. And Lily." Her voice softened. "That little girl has stolen a piece of my heart I didn't know was available." Jake squeezed her hand. "We feel the same way about you." Victoria took a deep breath. "I've spent my whole life running, from my father's criticism, from vulnerability, from connections that might hurt me. That night when you found me at the bar, I was at my lowest point. My father died believing I was cold and unlovable, just like him. And the worst part was, I feared he was right." "He wasn't," Jake said firmly. "I know that now," Victoria smiled. "Because you saw me, really saw me, at my worst moment, and you still treated me with kindness. You showed me I could be vulnerable and survive it." Jake thought about his own journey since losing his wife, how he'd closed himself off, focusing only on Lily and work, afraid to let anyone new into their fragile world. "We've both been hiding," he acknowledged. "Me behind my grief, you behind your success. And now?" Victoria asked, her eyes searching his. "Now I think maybe we don't have to hide anymore," Jake said. "At least not from each other." Victoria's smile was radiant. "I turned down the Chicago job this morning." Jake's heart leapt. "You did?" "Some opportunities are once in a lifetime," she said, squeezing his hand. "But so are some people." 6 months later, Jake stood in Victoria's apartment, though it was hardly recognizable as the sterile space he'd first entered that fateful night. Now, colorful throw pillows brightened the couch, family photos adorned the walls, and Lily's artwork was proudly displayed on the refrigerator. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked as Victoria hung the last picture, a framed photo of the three of them at the butterfly exhibit, their first day together. "Moving in together is a big step," she acknowledged, stepping back to admire the photo. "But we've practically been living together for months anyway, between your place and mine." It was true. Their lives had intertwined so naturally that this final step seemed almost a formality. Lily was thrilled about her new, bigger bedroom, and even Mrs. Patel had given her blessing, though she extracted a promise that they would still bring her homemade cookies every Sunday. "I never thought I'd have this," Victoria admitted, leaning into Jake's embrace. "A family. A home that feels like more than just a place to sleep." "I never thought I'd have it again," Jake replied, kissing the top of her head. "After Sarah died, I couldn't imagine letting anyone else in." Victoria turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for rescuing me that night." Jake smiled. "I think maybe we rescued each other." As they stood there in their new shared home, Jake marveled at how one moment of kindness had changed everything. Victoria had gone from the ice queen to the warm, loving woman in his arms. He had gone from a grieving widower just going through the motions to a man embracing a second chance at love. And Lily had gained not a replacement for the mother she'd lost, but a new source of love and stability in her young life. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new bedroom, Jake and Victoria sat on their balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I got a call from HR today," Victoria said, sipping her tea. "They've approved our relationship disclosure forms." Jake chuckled. "I still can't believe we had to file paperwork to date." "Corporate policy," Victoria shrugged. "Though I admit it's the first time I've been on this side of it." "Does it bother you?" Jake asked. "The office gossip, the way people look at us?" Victoria considered this. "A year ago, it would have driven me crazy. I was so concerned with being respected, with never showing weakness." She smiled, taking his hand. "Now I realize that what we have is worth any amount of whispers." "The team seems happier with the new Victoria anyway," Jake pointed out. "Productivity is up 20% since you stopped making the interns cry." Victoria laughed, swatting his arm playfully. "I was never that bad. You made Trevor hide in the supply closet for an hour after you critiqued his presentation." "Well, it was a terrible presentation," Victoria defended, but her eyes twinkled with humor. "But you're right. Leading through fear was my father's way. I don't want that to be my legacy." Jake squeezed her hand. "It won't be." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, until Victoria spoke again, her voice softer. "I visited my father's grave last week," she said. "First time since the funeral." Jake turned to her, surprised. "You didn't mention it." "I needed to do it alone," she explained. "To say goodbye properly, to let go of his voice in my head telling me I wasn't enough." She looked at Jake, her eyes clear and peaceful. "I told him about you and Lily, about how happy I am. I think he would have been surprised." "Are you okay?" Jake asked gently. Victoria nodded. "Better than okay. I feel free." She leaned against him. "My whole life, I've been trying to prove something, to him, to myself, to the world. Now I just want to live, to love you both, to build something real." Jake wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You know, the night I found you at that bar, I almost didn't go." "Why did you?" Victoria asked. "Because everyone deserves someone who shows up for them," Jake said simply. "Even difficult bosses." Victoria smiled against his shoulder. "Especially difficult bosses." 1 year to the day after Jake had carried Victoria home from the Copper Lantern, they returned to the bar, this time together, by choice, and with Victoria completely sober. "It looks different than I remember," she commented as they took seats at the bar. "Well, last time you were seeing double," Jake teased. The bartender approached, an older man with kind eyes. "What can I get you folks?" "Club soda with lime for me," Victoria said. "And whatever he's having." "Beer, please," Jake added. As the bartender prepared their drinks, Victoria looked around the upscale establishment. "I used to come here all the time, you know. Networking, client meetings, drowning my sorrows after particularly brutal board meetings." "And now?" Jake asked. Victoria smiled, her eyes warm as she looked at him. "Now I have better places to be." The bartender returned with their drinks and a curious expression. "You two look familiar. Have you been in before?" Victoria and Jake exchanged glances, a private smile passing between them. "Once," Jake answered. "It was a pretty important night, actually." "Must have been," the bartender nodded, noting their obvious happiness. "First date?" "Something like that," Victoria replied. "The beginning of a second chance." After they finished their drinks, Jake led Victoria outside. Instead of heading toward the parking lot, he guided her to the small park across the street, where a bench overlooked a fountain lit with soft blue lights. "I have something for you," he said as they sat down. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Victoria's eyes widened. Jake. It's not what you think, he said quickly, opening the box to reveal not a ring, but a delicate silver key on a chain. At least, not yet. That's coming, but I know we agreed to take things one step at a time. Victoria lifted the key, examining it in the moonlight. What's this for? It's symbolic, Jake explained. A year ago, you gave me the key to your apartment when we moved in together. But this is different. This is the key to our future, whatever we decide that looks like. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. Jake took the necklace and fastened it around her neck, the key resting just above her heart. I love you, Victoria. You, me, and Lily, we've built something beautiful from the most unexpected beginning. Who would have thought, Victoria mused, touching the key gently, that the worst night of my life would lead to the best year of my life. Jake smiled, taking her hand. Sometimes we have to fall apart before we can rebuild something stronger. As they walked back to their car, hand in hand, Jake reflected on their journey. From boss and employee to friends to family, their path had been unconventional but perfect in its own way. Victoria had transformed from the feared ice queen to a warm, loving partner and a wonderful influence in Lily's life. And Jake had found the courage to open his heart again, to believe in second chances. One moment of kindness on a difficult night had changed everything. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most meaningful connections begin when we're at our most vulnerable, and that everyone, no matter how strong they appear, sometimes needs someone to help them find their way home. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows of their shared bedroom, Jake watched Victoria sleep, her face peaceful, the key necklace glinting on her collarbone. In a few hours, Lily would burst in, eager to start their Saturday adventure. Their little family, forged from grief and loneliness but now overflowing with joy. Victoria stirred, opening her eyes to find him watching her. Good morning, she murmured. Good morning, he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. What are you thinking about? She asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Jake smiled, his heart full. Just that I'm glad you didn't forget. Victoria reached up, touching his face gently. How could I? It was the night that changed everything. And as they lay there, wrapped in the quiet morning light, both knew with absolute certainty that some mistakes are worth making, some vulnerabilities worth revealing, and some rescues change not just one night, but every night that follows. If you found this story touching, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of unexpected connections and second chances. Remember that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from our most vulnerable moments, and that kindness, even to those who may not seem to deserve it, can transform lives in ways we never imagined.